In a dusty corner of New Mexico, Ellie stood frozen in the post office line, phone in hand, heart racing. She had sent the text. Kind, thoughtful, vulnerable. But silence echoed back, louder than any rejection. Why is it, she wondered, that the more we want something, the more it slips away? It's not bad timing. It's not fate. It's frequency. You see, chasing is an action. It's energy. A quiet signal that whispers, "I'm not enough without you." And no matter what words you say, your soul tells the truth. In this video, we'll explore the unseen language of vibration and why what you feel may matter more than what you say. Stay. It might change everything. 1. Theory of consciousness and vibration. There's a man in Atlanta, Marcus. The kind of man who doesn't need to fill silence to make it warm. He's the one who holds the door open just a little longer, who listens without interrupting, who nods more than he speaks. You wouldn't pick him out in a crowd, and yet people gravitate to him like he's lit from within. Something about the way he walks into a room makes the air settle, like the room exhales with him. He doesn't push. He doesn't perform. He simply is. Then there's Rachel. She's sunshine on demand, the life of the party. Her voice rises to meet the mood. Her eyes scan for reactions. She smiles too wide, laughs a beat too long. And everyone thinks she's the happiest one there, until you sit close enough to feel it. That faint vibration of something aching beneath all the brightness, like a violin string tuned too tightly. Her presence doesn't soothe. It asks. It asks to be seen, to be reassured, to be told again and again, "You're enough." Carl Jung, with his steady hand and deep gaze into the soul, once said that consciousness is not just awareness, it's a living magnetic field. You can't touch it, but you can feel it. It's how you know someone is upset before they say a word. It's why you avoid the aisle seat next to the man who's trying too hard to smile. It's why your chest tightens around people whose sadness leaks out in invisible waves. We don't attract what we say we want. We attract what we vibrate. And vibration, unlike intention, cannot be faked. You can wear the right dress, say the clever line, keep your cool when he doesn't text back. But if your energy is pleading underneath it all, the world knows. People know. The nervous system knows. Dogs know. Babies know. It's not magic. It's emotional gravity. Just like the moon doesn't ask the tide to rise, it just is, and the water obeys. Your emotional state has its own pull. When you're anxious, you ripple. When you're whole, you rest. People feel it. They respond to it before their minds even catch up. That's why some people make you want to breathe deeper when they're near. That's why others make your muscles tense, even when they're being perfectly polite. And this is the great unspoken truth Jung hinted at in every word. You are not what you say. You are not what you post. You are what your field whispers to the world when you're not trying. When Marcus stands in line at the grocery store, he isn't trying to be magnetic. But his peace draws others near. His stillness says, "I'm home within myself," and the world listens. Rachel. She's not less worthy, but her field hums with a longing she hasn't yet soothed. And that's what people feel. Not her words, but the ache beneath them. And so, it's not about pretending to be whole. It's about daring to become it. To stop asking the world to answer your fear, and instead let your energy say, "I am already full." Because the world does not respond to what you hope you are. It responds to what you are right now. Second story 1. CARLA. Carla lived in a cozy townhouse on the east side of Austin, Texas. The kind of place with lavender by the windowsill and string lights that hummed at night. She was 34, smart, fiercely independent, the kind of woman who learned to make her own coffee strong and her solitude sweeter. People admired her. Her friends said she was the one who had figured it out. She read Jung before bed. She kept a gratitude journal. She even ran a small wellness blog filled with affirmations and playlists that could quiet a racing heart. And for a while, it looked like she had healed. But the heart has its own language, and the body always remembers. Each time a new man entered her life, it began the same way. Soft conversations, meaningful eye contact, slow walks under warm Texas skies. Hope would rise in her like morning light. She told herself she wasn't attached, just open, just present. But then came the pauses, the delayed responses, the drifting attention. And like clockwork, her chest would tighten. Her fingers hovered over her phone. Her mind spun stories she swore she no longer believed. And when it inevitably faded, quietly, like a candle burning out, Carla would sit in the dark and wonder why healing still felt so hollow. It wasn't until a Tuesday afternoon in a softly lit therapy room smelling faintly of eucalyptus that something inside her broke open. Her therapist, a woman with silvering hair and eyes that seemed to see through years, leaned in and said, almost tenderly, "Carla, you're not asking for love. You're begging for confirmation." The words landed like thunder in a silent valley. For the first time, Carla saw it. Not just the patterns in her relationships, but the motive underneath them. Her journaling hadn't been presence, it had been performance. Her boundaries hadn't been sovereignty, they'd been fear in a prettier dress. She hadn't moved on, she had only built a stage set, hoping someone would walk in, see her strength, and say, "You did it. You're lovable now." She wasn't living, she was still waiting to be rescued, and something in her, quiet and ancient, finally whispered back, "No more." That day, she didn't make a grand vow or post another quote about self-love. She went home, lit a candle, sat on her porch as dusk settled over the city, and simply let herself be. She stopped checking for texts, stopped rehearsing her worthiness, stopped twisting her light into shapes that someone else might find more palatable. And something curious happened. People didn't stop noticing her. They just started seeing the real her. Not because she sparkled louder, but because she stopped trying to. Her energy shifted from "please see me" to "I already see myself." From "choose me" to "I've already chosen." That's the thing about true healing. It doesn't roar. It doesn't demand. It arrives like a soft exhale after a lifetime of holding your breath. And from that moment forward, Carla was no longer searching for someone to fill the space beside her. She had finally made peace with the one who lived within. 3. Mechanism of the inner world and Jung's analysis. Every autumn in rural Maine, the trees bleed gold and ember without a single plea. They don't negotiate the weather. They don't beg the wind to be gentle. They just change. Quietly, unapologetically, they let go. And maybe there's something in that. A lesson not wrapped in words, but in the way nature lives without resistance. Carl Jung understood this truth long before we did. He wrote that the ego is the part of us that clings and claws, that strives and calculates. It's the voice in your head that says, "They must choose me. I need to prove I'm enough. I can't lose this." But the self, the deeper, stiller self, doesn't beg. It doesn't chase. It knows. It's the quiet knowing that you are whole, even if the world doesn't clap. It's the voice that waits beneath the noise, beneath the fear, saying, you don't have to become someone else to be loved. You already are. But here's the thing. When we long for someone, not from love, but from lack, we don't just hope. We project. We toss our unhealed pain into their lap and ask them to carry it, to fix what they didn't break, to answer the ache that was never theirs to soothe. You see it in the way a woman might smile too quickly after rejection, or how a man stays busy after heartbreak. Not to move on, but to avoid hearing the silence inside. That's not healing. That's hiding in motion. And energy, like truth, always finds its way to the surface. If you've ever walked into a room and felt something heavy before anyone spoke, you've felt it. If you've ever stood beside someone and sensed their sadness beneath their laughter, you've seen it. That's vibration. That's the unconscious leaking through the seams. Jung didn't believe in quick fixes. He didn't tell people to chant affirmations until their pain disappeared. He said the shadow, the hidden parts of ourselves, is not evil. It's forgotten, unspoken, waiting. And the more we deny it, the louder it roars in everything we touch. Real change doesn't come when you say, I'm fine. It comes the day you sit with the wounded part of you and say, I see you. I'm not running anymore. That's where transformation begins, not in grand gestures or sudden awakenings, but in the courage to stop performing and simply be. Like the trees in Maine, like the leaves that fall, not because they're broken, but because it's time. We don't become whole by chasing light. We become whole by turning toward the dark and not flinching. And maybe, just maybe, that's what Jung meant when he said the journey is inward. Not to fix, not to flee, but to remember who you were before the world told you to earn love. Before the ego got loud, just you, rooted, whole, enough. Czwarta kapitola 2. Natalia. In a rain-soaked corner of Seattle, tucked between a second-hand bookstore and a tea shop that always smelled like cinnamon and memory, Natalia built a new life from the ruins of her old one. She had once loved deeply. Too deeply. The kind of love that started with fireworks and ended with quiet destruction. A toxic partner who left more silence than scars, more doubt than closure. But Natalia didn't break. She wrote. She blogged. She shared her healing journey with strangers who turned into loyal readers, women and men alike who clung to her honesty the way she once clung to hope. Online, she was strength and softness woven together. She lit candles, practiced yoga, learned how to be alone without feeling lonely. But healing, she would soon learn, isn't always what it looks like in pictures. When she met James, it wasn't dramatic. It was gentle. He was kind, consistent, nothing like the storms she was used to. And maybe that was the problem. Because kindness, real and steady, makes the unhealed parts of you flinch. Not because it hurts, but because it asks for trust you've forgotten how to give. A week into their conversations, Natalia caught herself doing something she hadn't done in years, staring at her phone, replaying his messages like sacred riddles. Why didn't he use a period? Why hasn't he responded? What if I said too much, or not enough? Her chest tightened over small things. His silences, though brief, felt like abandonment wrapped in delay. She didn't tell her friends. She smiled on FaceTime, continued writing blog posts about boundaries and self-love. But inside, her world was shaking. It was in a quiet therapy session during a rainy Thursday morning that her therapist, a woman with eyes full of both challenge and compassion, paused mid-sentence and said with piercing gentleness, "Your words say, 'I'm fine,' but your energy still whispers, 'Please don't leave me.'" Natalia froze, not because she was caught in a lie, but because she realized she hadn't even heard herself whispering. That was the moment everything shifted. She understood then that healing doesn't always arrive with fanfare. It doesn't always sing through breakthroughs or bold declarations. Sometimes it hums, soft and low, beneath your breath. It waits in the spaces where you think you're strong, but still clench your fists. It lives in your bones, your breath, your nervous system. Natalia's mind had learned the language of empowerment, but her body still trembled in the quiet, still expected love to vanish, still braced for the goodbye. That's when she began to listen, not to her thoughts, but to her frequency. And the moment she stopped judging her reactions and started understanding them, was the moment healing truly began. Not in writing another post, not in deleting James's number, but in closing her laptop, placing her hand on her chest, and saying to herself, "You're safe now. I'm not leaving either." Because that's the healing we rarely talk about, the one where you stop waiting for someone else to stay and finally choose to stay with yourself. 5. The difference between control and surrender. In a sun-baked apartment on the edge of Phoenix, the blinds drawn against the afternoon heat, a woman sat on her couch, phone in hand, pretending not to care. She told herself, out loud even, "I'm not going to text him." But 5 minutes later, she was scrolling through his Instagram story, heart fluttering at every song lyric, every face he was with that wasn't hers. She hadn't sent a message, no, but her energy was screaming. That wasn't surrender. That was control in a prettier dress. The silence wasn't peace. It was pressure, and it was exhausting. Carl Jung once said that surrender is not weakness. It's the end of your war with yourself. It is not the act of stepping away from love, but of stepping into truth. Because surrender doesn't mean you stop feeling. It means you stop gripping. Far up north, in the quiet town of Middlebury, Vermont, an artist named Lena once painted stories with her hands. Her canvases were filled with wild skies and wide open fields. But her love life was a tangle of overthinking and holding on too tightly. Every time she met someone new, she would mold herself just enough to be easier to love. Less intense, more agreeable, always understanding. She thought she was being mature, adaptable, but deep inside she wasn't bending, she was shrinking. It wasn't until her latest relationship unraveled, not in anger, but in absence, that she finally sat in the wreckage and asked the question she'd been avoiding for years. Why do I keep disappearing inside the people I love? Her therapist didn't give her a worksheet or a mantra, just a pause. Then the softest, most powerful words. What if love isn't something you earn by being small? That night, Lena didn't light candles or make resolutions. She sat at her studio window, stared into the darkness of her own reflection, and whispered, "I will no longer shape myself to avoid abandonment." Because what she had called love before had been a form of control. She didn't love freely. She loved strategically, carefully, managing her tone and timing like someone walking a tightrope. But surrender, real surrender, means letting go of the tightrope. It means standing on solid ground and saying, "If I am loved, let it be for who I am, not for the version of me I've rehearsed." When Lena stopped managing her relationships like fragile art pieces, something strange and beautiful happened. People stayed. The ones who mattered no longer felt suffocated by her needing, and the ones who left? They simply made space for something truer. Control comes from fear. Surrender comes from trust. And trust, Jung said, is not built in others first, but within yourself. When you finally stop twisting your light to fit into someone else's shadows, you'll find that the right hearts never needed you to shrink. You were always enough. You just had to stop fighting yourself long enough to feel it. 6. The power of presence. Presence isn't a tactic. It isn't something you wear like a dress or spray on like perfume. You can't fake it with long pauses or soft smiles. Presence is a posture of the soul, a way of being that says, without a single word, I am here. I am enough. I need nothing from this moment but the moment itself. In Charleston, South Carolina, where the air hangs thick with stories and the wind still hums with old songs, a man walked into a little diner off King Street. He didn't draw attention. No flashy clothes, no booming voice. Just a man with tired eyes and steady hands who ordered his coffee black and sat in the corner like he belonged there without needing to. A teenage girl at the next table stopped mid-scroll. She couldn't explain it. He wasn't particularly handsome. He wasn't trying to be noticed. But something about him felt solid, like you could lean against him and he wouldn't move. That's what presence does. It calms the room without a word. It draws attention not by demand, but by quiet gravity. Carl Jung once wrote that true freedom stretches only as far as the limits of our consciousness, and presence, he believed, was the gate. To be present means to stop living in yesterday's heartbreak and tomorrow's what-ifs. It means to let your breath settle where your feet stand. No more running in your mind. No more rehearsing a version of yourself you think they'll prefer. You've probably met someone like that. Someone who felt like home the second they looked at you. Not because they said the perfect thing or made your heart race, but because they were there, fully. No mask, no noise. And maybe you didn't know it then, but that's what alignment looks like. When their breath doesn't betray anxiety. When their gaze isn't scanning the room. When their energy isn't tugging at you to fill some unseen gap. They're not reaching. They're not resisting. They're just being. Presence doesn't ask for anything. That's what makes it irresistible. It's not loud, but it's unforgettable. And the truth is, most of us are too tired to chase connection. What we're starving for is realness, to sit across from someone who isn't trying to impress us, fix us, or escape their own reflection. We want the kind of presence that says, you don't need to be more than what you are right now. Because when someone sits in their truth, it gives you permission to sit in yours. That's why the man in the diner stayed in that girl's mind long after he paid his check and left. He didn't leave behind a phone number or a clever line. He left behind a feeling. And in a world spinning on noise, there is nothing more magnetic than a person who's still. 7. Vibrational detachment. In a quiet town tucked among the pine trees of Oregon, where the fog kisses the rooftops and everything smells faintly of cedar and yesterday's rain, Sarah sat on her front porch as twilight crept in. The world was quiet, but inside her, everything buzzed. Her phone rested face down on the table beside her, like a small, glowing invitation to lose herself again. She reached for it, then stopped, closed her eyes, took a breath, and whispered to the ache in her chest, the longing in her fingertips. I do not chase. I do not cling. I am present. It wasn't a spell. It wasn't a mantra pulled from a self-help book. It was a sacred reminder. A promise to herself whispered into the cooling dusk. Because detachment, real detachment, doesn't mean you no longer care. It doesn't mean you harden your heart or stop dreaming of connection. It means you refuse to betray your own peace just to keep something broken from falling apart. Sarah had learned that the hard way. She used to react to every pause in a conversation like it was a warning. She'd overthink punctuation, interpret silences as danger signs. Her love was generous, but it was also anxious. Her kindness often wrapped itself around people like a lifeline and quietly drowned her in return. Carl Jung once warned that when we're controlled by an unhealed wound, our choices may feel logical, but they're really rehearsals of pain. The mind creates stories, the heart relives old patterns, and the soul sits quietly, waiting for you to finally notice the difference. That evening, Sarah did something radical. She didn't act. She didn't send the message, didn't reach out, didn't try to fix the discomfort by filling it. Instead, she stayed in the discomfort, felt the full weight of wanting to be wanted, and she let it pass through her like a wave. That's vibrational detachment. Not coldness, but clarity. Not silence as punishment, but silence as a return to center. Not indifference, but the refusal to beg for love through energetic whispers that say, "Please choose me so I can finally choose myself." In that stillness, something inside Sarah shifted. Her power came back. Not the kind that demands or defends, but the kind that simply is, steady, grounded. Because vibrational detachment isn't about stepping away from love. It's about stepping away from the illusion that your worth depends on whether or not someone else sees it. When you stop acting from fear, when you stop needing an immediate answer, a validation, a rescue, you give your soul space to breathe. And from that space, life begins to return what truly belongs to you. Not because you chased it, but because you stopped pushing it away with your own unhealed vibration. Sarah didn't need closure that night. She needed presence. And when she found it, the ache softened. Not because someone texted back, but because she finally did. Conclusion: return to the center. You do not need to become someone shinier, louder, softer, or safer. You do not need to twist your truth into something more convenient. You only need to come home. Home to the version of you that existed before fear started editing your spirit. The part that knows how to sit in stillness, not out of resignation, but out of trust. The part that does not need to prove, or chase, or plead, because it already is. Carl Jung called it the greatest privilege of a lifetime, to become who you truly are. And becoming doesn't mean changing. It means remembering. Remembering what the world tried to bury under performance and pain. That you were never broken, just waiting. So don't rush. Don't shrink to fit into places not meant for your fullness. Don't beg anyone to see your light. Just stand in it. Because when you return to your center, you don't need to say much. Your presence says it for you, and the right people. They will recognize the stillness in you, because they've been waiting to find it too.